Is the Mario Kart 8 Booster Course Pass good? A question I've been asking a lot recently. Because Booster Course Pass Wave 3 released somewhat recently, and I've been playing these tracks a lot as of the last several weeks. And I've been wondering. I haven't been critical of it because, I'll be honest, for what it is, I have been enjoying it. But there are a lot of critiques, and I think this is a good point to state my thoughts on it at the moment, as of recording this video, we are halfway through it, and have another about year of maps to release, because they're releasing at a really slow rate. Now, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room first, the graphics. A lot of people have complained about that, and I agree, they aren't the best. And the thing is, it looks pretty good. Albeit, a lot of the tracks that look really good are almost always being carried by the 8 lighting engine. And I do wish they put more effort into these maps. Don't get me wrong, we're getting 48 courses. I'm more than happy with that. But graphically, there are things about them that don't look the best. I'm not going to nitpick that too much, because personally, I'm not someone who cares that much about graphics. If the game doesn't make me despise looking at it, that's good enough. I will admit, it could look better. The Switch has more potential, but they're good. They're fine. I don't really care, because I've never been a graphics person. I'd much rather care about things like gameplay. Then, it looks good. Speaking of gameplay, I'm going to run down each track one by one, because it's not exactly gameplay I can talk about, because it's 8. I think everyone's played Mario Kart 8 at some point. So, the gameplay is that, but the real thing that makes the gameplay good are the tracks. So, let's talk about them. First up, Paris Promenade. And while I'm at it, I'm going to discuss every single, Tour original track, because, to me, they're all the same. The Tour City tracks are fine. They have a cool gimmick, that being the lap changing every time. It's cool, it's fine. I personally don't really care, but I think what it is, as someone who doesn't know any of these places, I don't care. But since I live in Canada, and we have the Vancouver Velocity map, several things in that map I'm like, oh, it's that, and oh, it's that. I think they're cool if you are familiar with these locations, but if you aren't, they're kind of just boring generic city tracks. Next up, 3DS Toad Circuit. And it sure is a Toad Circuit track! I'll be honest, I've heard people call circuit tracks this. They are kinda lame and boring. Because the problem is, there's nothing to them. And while I'm fine with having 1 or 2 circuit tracks in a game, after all, they are meant to be the tutorial tracks. They are meant to be the basic tracks. The problem is, when this is something like the 40th, this is probably like the 52nd track in the game, 50th track in the game, it's kind of ridiculous to have level 50 be a tutorial level. And it's like, it isn't bad, but there's nothing to it. There's nothing special, there aren't really any fun tricks, it's very standard. I don't hate it, but it's just kinda there, and you already have a lot of tracks like it. It's not bad, and if I play on it, I'm not gonna complain. It's not a track I will actively complain about, but there's just nothing to it. Next up is Choco Mountain. I really like this course. Honestly, I do. It's fun. It's not amazing, but I enjoy it, especially because of things like the bumps at the end work really well with 8's trick system. And while it's not an amazing retro track, and it's very similar layout-wise to the original N64 track, so much that 8's engine brings to the table, like its trick system, which yes, this is the same as 7's and almost identical to Wii's, but the point being, because of that trick system, there's a lot of really fun turns, there's a lot of really fun ramps, and overall it's a really fun track to go down. It's not amazing, but it has a lot of moments I really enjoy. Next up is Coconut Mall. And while I agree the map got neutered a bit, overall it's still really fun. It's still Coconut Mall at its course with a lot of fun turns, a lot of fun shortcuts. It's visually great. Really, one of the only complaints I have is the escalator thing, which, look, I get it makes the track easier and all, but honestly, it's kind of nice to have a visual indicator. Will it can be worse? I think it is definitely a quality of life feature that a lot of people will appreciate, and will definitely help out a lot of players who are newer to Mario Kart. The only other complaint I have is the ending section. Why did the carts not move? Yes, they supposedly fixed it, and don't get me wrong, it's better. I still think it was better in Wii, but basically, aside from that ending section, which can feel a bit awkward, especially with how much of a straight line it is, especially at launch, it's not awful. It's a really solid remake, which still has everything I love about Coconut Mall, and it's still Coconut Mall, so I like it. Shroom Ridge is probably my favorite track from Wave 1. It is so fun. I love the shortcuts, and this track is really fun, especially on 150 and 200cc. It comes down to, will it can be simple at times. There are so many fun tricks to pull off, I have to give it praise for that. Again, it's not the most amazing, it's not the most detailed, it's not the most deep, but there's some really fun tricks, some really fun turns to pull off, and overall, I really like it. Sky Garden is a lot of missed opportunity, if you ask me. Especially with how they remade some of the Super Circuit tracks. It just doesn't work for me. There's one shortcut I like, that being the one where you do the thing, which is currently the thumbnail on screen, actually. But overall, it's just kind of fine. It's not awful, it's not amazing, it's just not something I really like. There aren't that many moments I can think of, especially off the top of my head, that are memorable and fun. It's not awful, I don't hate it, but it's missing something that makes me like a Mario Kart track, but I can't really tell what. Remember how I said I talked about all the Mario Kart Tour track at the very start? I lied. Ninja Hideaway is still here. Basically, I only talked about the city tracks, and Ninja Hideaway is really solid and really fun. It has so many branching paths that I don't think I've taken every combination of paths, and I've raced on this track a ton. It's been one of my go-tos from the DLC. In fact, it was my go-to along with Shroom Ridge for a while. And it's a fantastic track. I love it. It's fun, and they did a great job at encapsulating a new track, so to speak. Honestly, if it had better graphical fidelity, this would feel less like a tour track and more like an original track made for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I'm specifically talking about graphical fidelity because that makes you be able to tell, yep, this is a DLC track. Again, I'm not a graphics person. The problem with the graphics for me come in, you basically have plastic toys and realism, like cartoony realism, in the same game. The art styles for them are just so vastly different that, honestly, it's a bit off-putting at times. Mario Circuit 3 sure is Mario Circuit 3. There's no depth to it, there's no laps. It overall looks bland. Like, overall, I think a SNES track can work. Hell, there are some that work in the base game. And hell, I think a track with very little depth can work incredibly well if it was stylized right. This feels less like a SNES track and more like, yep, we sure did forget to add the Y-axis. But I think overall, if you stylized everything on the track like 16-bit, 32-bit pixel art, except for the drivers and items, that would have such a memorable look to it that I think, while it's still lacking in the depth I appreciate, it would still be noticeable. I think a good way they could have altered the track for a remake would have actually been having a section on the colored bricks, using that depth, adding things like trick ramps. Really, if it had more depth to it, And depth, I mean literally I wanted to have more of a Y-axis. I think this track would have done better for me, but it's really just a Mario Kart SNES or Super Circuit track in 8's engine. It's nothing amazing and it's nothing awful, it's just kinda there and unmemorable. Calamari Desert is really fine. It's nice that it changes a bit in between each lap, and it has some pretty fun tricks and cool things you can do on it. It's nothing amazing and it's nothing awful. But I don't have much to say for it since it sure is Calamari Desert. It was quite a shock the first time to ride on the rails, and also, like, the second I landed on the rails after that jump, the train just appeared and jump scared me. The first time I had ever played the track. So, it has some cool moments. It has some fun moments. It has some fun tricks. Overall, it's really solid. Waluigi's Pinball is really fun. I love it. It's great. It's exactly what you expect when you hear Waluigi's Pinball. It's Waluigi's Pinball. It looks beautiful, which is mostly because of 8's lighting engine. This is the track I was talking about when I said the ones that look really good are carried by the lighting engine. This specific track was what I was talking about. And overall, it's really fun. So, I don't hate it. I don't love it. But it's enjoyable. It looks gorgeous, and it has some fun moments. Hell, I love the start where you're immediately launched out of a cannon. I think it would have been fun to actually be able to drive on that as an anti-gravity section, new to the 8 remake, letting you drive up the walls and knock other players. I think that could have been fun, but for what it is, it's a faithful and fun remake. Next up, Snowland! Honestly, really cool. Looks pretty good, once again. It's lighting engine on the ice. I wish you could actually go under the ice at bits, like you can in Sherbertland. But this is how you remake something like a GBA map. It's really cool, I really like it, it's some fun yet noticeable shortcuts, and still is the style of a super track. Super as in Super Circuit and Super Mario Kart. I just figured they're so similar, I might as well just call them super tracks. It's pretty cool, it's pretty fun. I don't hate it and I don't love it, but for what it is, it does a great job. Mushroom Gorge, the music we were literally listening to at the start of this video. I really like Mushroom Gorge. It's fun. It has so many fun tricks to do. There are a few shortcuts that are really cool to take. Overall, I love it. Again, one of my favorite parts about Gorge, and this goes for basically every track that does stuff like this, is tricking. It can be just so fun to trick off of certain paths. And I always take the red mushroom path on Gorge. I always have. It's so fun to trick off those mushrooms. It's so fun to drive on them. It's so fun to... Honestly, just so much of this track just brings me joy. It's not the best in the world, and it has its flaws, but I really just like tricking off the mushrooms. It's so fun and brings such a satisfying taste of speed. Next up, Sky High Sunday, the track Nintendo insists is new. I say insist because it's a tour track, let's all be honest. When I was first playing it with a friend, I basically went, according to Nintendo, this is a new track, and he's like, this looks like a tour track that they just held off from tour so they could put it in the booster course pass and claim it off as brand new. Yeah, I agree with them. This very much just feels like a tour track that they waited an extra couple of weeks to release so they could just call it a track, original 8, and pretend like they're doing effort. I'll talk about what I mean by doing effort after the tracks, but honestly, it's not that fun. The anti-gravity water physics just make doing a lot of the tricks very slow. Some of the things like the boost rails, those don't look like you should be hitting them, yet you are supposed to. There's so many things that just aren't well visually conveyed. The opening launcher I find really finicky and awkward, and usually end up falling. It's not a track I'm that fond of. It just feels awkward in more ways than one. Next up, Boo Lake. Honestly, really fun. I love going underwater. I love seeing actual use of anti-gravity in a track like this. And it has some fun moments. I like driving the upwards underwater. It has some pretty fun moments, and overall some really good use of the trick system. If you haven't noticed, I really like the trick system. It's not the best track in the world, and hell, it's one of the weaker ones from Wave 3. However, it's really solid, and I really like it. I'm covering these two together because Peach Garden and Rock Mountain are really solid. In the case of Rock Mountain, it has some fun moments, and I love using the glider to boost off the pipes at the beginning, and for Peach Gardens, it's really fun. I love how the Luigi statue is facing backwards, and I love how you drive backwards on the final lap. That's basically all I have to say. They're really solid. They don't have really any flaws, but there isn't much amazing about them. Maple Treeway. Remember half pipes existing? Yeah, they're back. They actually had to add these specifically to 8 since they were in the base game. It's a really fun track, but it's Maple Treeway. Everything I have to say about it has already been said, because it's Maple Treeway. It's a really solid map that's really fun, looks really cool. I love the autumn vibe. Honestly, autumn's season I'm really mixed about, but it's a pretty solid stage. Look at me! I'm essentially an oval, and the literal final section of the track is a straight line with nothing on it. Merry Mountain. Going up the mountain has a few fun moments, but going down, there's just nothing there. This track feels like it was just there so they can go, hey, since we're releasing this in November, you want to throw in the Christmas map and call it the Christmas DLC? Because about the first quarter of the map has some fun moments, but there are so many moments that just feel like you're just driving forward, doing nothing. I don't know, maybe if the track was more condensed and everyone stayed together, it would be a bit more interesting, because then you'd have something like Baby Park where there's just a ton of items flying at you. But if you want that kind of vibe, just play Baby Park. And last, but certainly not least, 3DS Rainbow Road. This is a track a lot of people wanted. It's really cool. It's really fun. I love the journey. Once again, it's not much I can say because it's basically just the 3DS track again. And the 3DS track is incredibly solid with some really fun turns. I love doing tricks off the moon craters. This is a track that makes good use of anti-gravity despite not being there originally. Basically, I don't have much to say because it's a really, really solid Rainbow Road, and one of my favorites as well. And a lot better than Rainbow Road for 8. And as for the effort thing I mentioned, Nintendo is waiting like 6 months in between releases when they are all basically ports of the tracks from Tour verbatim with very little new added features. Several of the things, like them claiming Sunday as a new map, feel very much like this is us pretending that we're putting a lot more effort in than we are. I honestly feel, with the quality of the maps we've gotten so far, that most of these could have been released all at once and there wouldn't be a quality difference. In fact, I'm fairly certain there won't be a quality difference. Unless they step things up for the second half, the quality hasn't been that good considering they're just porting things from Tour. The 8 engine helps a lot because 8 actually is a really solid and really well-controlled game. And overall, I'm enjoying myself with it because it's more tracks to play on an already really fun racing game. But I really hope Nintendo tries more in the second half. Because, well, these are fun. It does feel kind of like Nintendo just wanted a quick way to make DLC for the best-selling game on the Switch, instead of actually making DLC for the best-selling game on the Switch. Which really sucks. What do you guys think? As of Wave 3, is Mario Kart 8's Booster Course Pass worth the price? If you enjoyed, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. Goodbye!